Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly hump day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get in to this week's show. Friends, lovers, listeners, happy Wednesday, happy hump day, and happy Sex on the Peach day. Okay, I feel like this is going to be a solid word vomit, so lock the doors, here we go. I think it is absolutely fair to say that this season has been a complete shit show, and that is being polite. I have been extremely absent, and no, that's not because I'm in a new relationship vacuum. I am not that kind of gal. It will never actually cease to amaze me how a boyfriend can turn a best friend into a see you in 2027 situation. So no, I'm not in a love-induced hibernation. He who shall be known as Jack Reacher is actually very supportive of the podcast and would have no interest in monopolising my time over it. This is very much a me problem. And I guess this is going to be kind of a vulnerable episode. And, you know, I like to keep things honest, but I am not feeling my best self by any means at the moment. And as ironic as this is, as the literal creator of a collaboration, not a performance, I have developed what can only be described as performance anxiety towards my very own podcast. A podcast about not performing. How fucking meta. Great. Now, yes, I know that this entire founding statement about this podcast is supposed to be about sex, but I do like to carry it throughout most areas in my life because I hate performative action in any capacity. I would always rather collaborate with people than perform for them, she says, as a musical theatre performer. But that's probably the entire underlying foundation of the fact I've spent my whole life on stage and am trying to steer a new career towards working in the therapy space, to literally be a collaborator, not a performer. But even when it comes to this podcast, it's the reason I record things quite last minute so that I can be present for last minute things people send in, or write episode content that feels timely and relevant. And it's the reason I put out questions and polls and try to interact with anyone who listens so that every single episode feels like I am collaborating with anyone who wants to tune in, rather than just being like, hey, listen to me, for I am the god of all that is holy and sexual. But as of late, every single week, it comes to the time when I need to write notes and record, and I'm like, I can't do it. Like, how have I developed imposter syndrome on my own podcast where the sole and only person involved is me? It has felt like such a block week after week after week. And then I feel anxious for having not recorded anything. And then the next week comes and the same thing happens. And it is an incredibly depressing spiral. And I have let it go on for, in my opinion, too long. And I'm basically determined to get back on track and not let that negative mindset continue to take over. But I feel very overwhelmed at life and at the world. I am not someone who carries the world's injustices lightly. I really struggle with injustice. I really struggle with feeling helpless. I really struggle with ignorance and prejudice and hate and divisive rhetoric. I really struggle with the current state of our political system and the political leaders of the world and the direction things seem to be going in. And I feel it very, very deeply. And that is affecting me at the moment. I feel extremely low. I'm not enjoying things in the way that I normally would. I don't feel myself. I constantly feel like I should be doing more to help the world, to help people who are suffering. And I get frustrated at people who don't seem to care. And I am in general an extremely passionate and driven person. And I feel like everything is so overwhelmingly scary that it's almost leaving me feeling apathetic at times, because if I truly let myself sit in things, I'm pretty sure I might just have a nervous breakdown. And I think I've gotten into the headspace that with all of that going on in the world, why the fuck would anyone care what I have to say about sex? Which, again, is against everything this whole podcast was ever supposed to be about. My whole MO for this space was that if anything I say helps even one person, then that's all that matters to me. But at the moment, I am overwhelmed by an inner voice that says no one cares. And another inner voice that is terrified of saying something not completely 100% accurate and correct, because it just feels like everything is so fragile at the moment and people are just so desperate to bite. And even right now, I feel bad for basically moaning, because I am lucky and I have so many privileges in life. And I'm certainly not someone who needs anyone to pity me. This isn't a woe is me moment. I just feel quite lost, and I need to know if anyone else is feeling like this. Like, please tell me that some of you listening feel like you are about to take a trip to Breakdown City because the state of the world is just simply almost too much to bear, and you want to find ways to still be happy in your day-to-day life and in your micro community, but then you almost feel selfish for doing so. Please tell me some of you are also in this mental spiral. I feel like pretty much every episode, I want to reassure everyone that whatever they are going through, they aren't alone. And there will be so many other people feeling the same way. And actually, we all just need to talk about it more so that we know we aren't alone. And so this episode, I'm asking for some reassurance that I'm not alone in feeling this way. But essentially, long way around the houses, I know this season has been a shit show. And I'm just like, come on, Peach, let's just get to the end of this one and we can do a sexy, sexy comeback and just be fucking better in season 5. Like, this has happened now, so just allow it. But I am annoyed that I have let this season get to where it has in terms of just not being consistent, because I pride myself on being a consistent and reliable person in life. And also I do have it in me to be a perfectionist, even though I don't like that about myself, so I try my best not to be. But basically, I am sorry, especially as people have written to me to ask what's up, and I haven't felt ready to confront it all yet. I don't even really know what I am confronting. I am sorry for letting anyone down who does want to tune in on a weekly or fortnightly basis. And if this has become that safe, reliable space and I've been fully MIA. And I'm sorry to myself for being what has actually been quite unkind to myself recently. That is something I actively preach against. And the vast majority of the time, I do practice everything I preach because words are cheap if there is no action to back it up. And this wasn't even the next episode that was planned. I actually have full notes on the Bonnie Blue documentary that I was planning on bringing to you. Very different. Maybe that will come next. But what actually brought me back to the podcast at all, rather than continuing to give it avoidant attachment vibes, is the fact that feeling the way I have has aggressively affected my own sex drive and sex life. And I know people sometimes think I have my shit together when it comes to sex. And yes, whilst I am very educated and well researched and open-minded and can talk easily about the topic, I sometimes also have zero control over my own physiology. And my own sex drive completely left the building. Packed a suitcase, bought a one-way ticket, didn't even bother leaving a note. Just vanished. And I've kind of been left with that low-level hum of dread that just sits in your chest. And add that to the personal stuff we all juggle, work, bills, relationships, the never-ending mental load of keeping your life together. I just feel like my brain is running at 120% capacity just to survive the day. And sex doesn't really thrive in that environment. Sex needs space. It needs relaxation. It needs you to have enough energy to want it. And my nervous system right now is like, sorry, babe, all units are busy processing existential dread. Please hold. And one of the things that has made this whole experience hard is that my partner knows me as someone with a very high sex drive. Like, we all know by now that's part of who I am. It's part of how we connect. And, you know, I guess it's always been a part of how I've defined myself in relationships and almost part of the way I show up in the world. And although we are 6 months in, that's still early days. So I'm a little bit like, brain, are you for fucking real? Really? Now? And I literally host a podcast about sex. I talk to tens of thousands of people about pleasure and confidence, communication, about being comfortable in your own body and having better sex. And here I am lying in bed, unable to have sex, unable to feel desire in the moment. And it's nothing to do with my partner. I literally couldn't be more attracted to him if I tried. He is the person I feel so sexually safe and excited with. It is entirely my own anxiety, my own nervous system, my own stress and overwhelm that's completely putting up a wall. And somehow that makes me feel like a total fraud. And I guess it's one thing to talk about sex and give thoughts, sometimes advice on how to have better, more satisfying experiences. And it is another thing entirely to be living through a period where your own sex drive is completely gone for what feels like a completely helpless reason. If I've lost my sex drive before, it has usually been connected to a relational issue or even a physical health problem. Like, this is the first time this has happened for me in this way, especially when I am with someone who I am so incredibly attracted to. And the whole thing feels really ironic. It feels a little bit embarrassing, and of course, part of me has worried that he might be disappointed or frustrated, even though he has never made me feel that way, even though I would advise anyone listening not to feel that way if it were them. The truth is, he has been incredible. He doesn't judge me. He's not disappointed. He's just being with me. And that in itself is also a kind of intimacy that I actually probably haven't experienced that much of before. To the point, I wish I could get him on the podcast. I wish he could talk to men, especially cis-het men, about what it looks like to be a respectful, supportive, loving partner when the person you care about is struggling. The incels might call him a simp, but we move. I'd love to see them call him that to his face. But listen, he would never be on the show. The man doesn't even have social media. But anyway, I am frustrated with my anxiety, even though I'm grateful for a partner who doesn't make it worse. And I want my listeners to hear that, because sexual anxiety doesn't mean you don't love your partner. It doesn't mean you are unattracted to them. And it doesn't mean intimacy is over. It does mean your brain and your body are temporarily out of sync, and the people worth keeping around will see you first, not just the sex. And it has started to feel better over the past week. So I'm starting to see my way out of what feels like the sex fog. But here's where I landed. And this is why I wanted to do this episode, because this time I'm out here trying to convince myself that I'm not alone, because I do know it's not just me. I do know I'm not the only one lying in bed at night thinking, I would love to want sex right now, but I don't, because my brain is too busy catastrophizing about the government or if the planet's going to fall apart by 2050. And the shit thing about anxiety is it doesn't politely wait outside the bedroom door. It barges in, sits on the edge of the bed, and starts narrating every single thought that you don't want to be thinking in that moment. So instead of pretending it isn't happening, instead of putting pressure on myself to just push through it, I thought, why not actually talk about it? Why not make this an episode about it? Because anxiety, and especially sexual anxiety, isn't rare. It's not weird. It's not unusual. It's something so many of us deal with, whether it's about your body, your performance, past experiences, or like me, the general sense that the world is on fire and your nervous system is too fried to think about orgasms. So think of this episode as part confession, part solidarity. My anxiety has completely tanked my sex drive, and this is me saying, okay, if I'm going through this, I bet some of you are too. And rather than hiding it or adding shame on top of an already frustrating situation, let's unpack it together. Let's talk about the scenarios our brains invent. Let's share the awkwardness. Let's also look at the ways we can make sex feel safe, fun, and possible again, even when anxiety is hanging around. Because I know you've all been with me through so many of these conversations, and you know I never want to sit here and pretend I've got it all figured out. I don't. Right now, I am living through it with you. And if you've ever been thinking about having sex and your brain instead suddenly goes, what if the world ends tomorrow? Then congratulations. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are human. And so am I. So let's get into it. Here is Horny but Hindered. Okay, so enough about me for now. About a week ago, I popped out a question on my Instagram to ask all of my lovely friends, lovers, listeners, what might cause you some sexual anxiety from time to time. And we are going to chat through some of them just now. I wish I could do them all, but alas, no one has time to listen to a 4-hour podcast. So I've tried to choose a selection that covers a wide range, shall we say, and I guess this is the part of the episode where I can say, I hope this makes people feel less alone, because I promise you that every single thing that was sent in, from the funny to the traumatic, you're in good company. So here we go. Super anxious about getting a UTI. I'm on medication, but I've been traumatized by previous experiences. I completely get that. I get thrush more, so that's something I always think about. But I did once get a really bad UTI from having sex in a shower. And I was performing in Phantom of the Opera at the time I had this UTI. And Christine Daae was giving cystitis Daae. And trust me, that think of me cadenza was basically just me screaming in discomfort. UTIs are so uncomfortable, so fucking frustrating, and often really painful. And when you've had a bad experience in the past, your body and your brain hold on to that memory in a very real way. Even just thinking about sex can trigger anxiety or sometimes even a panicky feeling, because your nervous system is remembering that past discomfort. And you immediately jump ahead in your mind to the sex being over and a UTI making an appearance before anything has even happened. And that's completely normal. Even if you are taking medication or doing everything right, it doesn't automatically erase the emotional or physical memory of the pain those infections can cause. And one thing that can help is to give yourself some little areas of control. Simple things like drinking plenty of water. I know I'm one to talk, dehydrated queen, the hypocrisy is real. But seriously, drink your water, friends. Peeing after sex, making sure you wear breathable clothing and underwear, and paying close attention and noticing how your body feels before and after intimacy can actually make a difference. You're not eliminating the anxiety entirely, but you will give your nervous system a little reassurance that you can manage this and that it's safe. Tracking patterns over time can really help, because sometimes seeing evidence that nothing bad happens consistently can slowly ease the anticipatory anxiety. But beyond just the practical steps, because I'm sure it feels like a practical situation to solve, there's also the work of separating what happened in the past from what's happening right now. I know that sounds easier said than done, but any kind of trauma is funny in that way. Not funny, haha, funny, fuck this, but your body remembers the sensation of pain, even if logically you know that the situation is different now. Your nervous system reacts first and reasoning comes second. And I know that people sometimes think this stuff can sound a bit wishy-washy, away with the fairies, when I start bringing anything meditation-based into the sex space. But this is where grounding techniques can be really helpful. Focusing on your breath, noticing the sensations in your body that signal safety, or gently narrating to yourself, my body is safe, this moment is okay. These things can just slowly retrain your nervous system to relax and remind you that the present isn't the past. Because trauma doesn't magically disappear on its own. And even if it's a physical trauma, that doesn't mean we aren't mentally affected by it. And when you do engage in sexual activity, you are allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to slow things down and prioritize your physical and emotional safety. And doing that doesn't make you weak or weird. It's just self-respect and care. And taking those steps to protect yourself and to honor your body and to reduce anxiety is actually really empowering, because it's a huge part of being able to reclaim pleasure and intimacy on your own terms. So if anxiety about UTIs or past trauma shows up, remind yourself you're not broken. Your body is capable of feeling safe, and taking small intentional steps to manage both your physical and emotional needs is absolutely valid. Over time, the fear that used to overshadow intimacy can loosen its grip, and you can start to experience sex as something enjoyable rather than something fraught with anxiety. Queefing with a new partner. Oh, queefing. I'm actually surprised to say that hasn't occurred with the man otherwise known as Jack Reacher yet. But I'm just convinced that's because there's truly no space for even air to try and enter me. For further context, you're just going to have to listen to Left You on Red, because I'm not getting into that right now. But let's get into queefing, because honestly, it's one of those things that is so completely normal. And yet when it happens with a new partner, it just feels mortifying. Like your body has betrayed you at the worst possible moment. You're lying there thinking, oh my God, they are judging me. This is disgusting. I've ruined everything. And the truth is, it's literally just air leaving your vagina. That's it. And it's their fault. It's their fault the air is there. So nothing is broken, nothing needs to be fixed, and nothing about it reflects on your body or your body's performance. And the real reality check on queefing, unless your partner is ridiculously immature, I mean, if you're dating a straight man, that could absolutely be the case, they are probably not thinking about it the way your brain is. You might be imagining them silently critiquing every part of your anatomy, when in reality, they either didn't even really notice, or they noticed and thought it was kind of funny. And that's okay. We love a laugh attack. We love sex being funny. Humour is actually one of the best ways to deal with queefing. Laughing, make a little joke. It just takes the tension out of the moment and signals that you're comfortable with yourself. The more you normalise it internally, the less anxious you feel, because a lot of queefing anxiety is just the fear of it happening again. And everyone makes noises. Farts happen. Skin squeaks, muscles twitch. Sometimes we make sex noises that we're like, what the fucking fuck was that? Sometimes the bed creaks in ways you can't control. It's all just part of being human. Queefing is just another one of those reminders that your body is alive, it's functioning, and it's responsive. And instead of treating it like a catastrophic failure, you can just treat it like a little blip, a funny little moment that happens to every human with a vulva at some point. Once you stop treating it as a shameful thing, your partner often mirrors that comfort, because even though it shouldn't bother a partner, that's not to say that everyone just knows how to react, and they might not know how to react in a way that doesn't make you feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. But if they see you owning your body, laughing at the absurdity that science really created the fucking queef, like truly, thanks. But suddenly the whole dynamic shifts from embarrassment to humour, and that's intimacy. Queefing doesn't have to be a source of stress. It actually just reminds us that sex is messy, human, and real. And when you treat it that way, the anxiety disappears and intimacy becomes lighter, more playful, just a bit more fun. In a long-term relationship, when the sex you are trying to have that day just isn't working for you, when is an acceptable time to just call it? It is this weird thing that when sex just isn't working, when your body or your mind just is not cooperating, it can feel like this little personal failure. Like somehow you are letting yourself or your partner down, which is wild because it's not a failure. Your body and your brain are just sending a very clear signal that today isn't the day, and that's okay. Everyone has these moments. Sometimes you're exhausted from work, stressed about life, anxious about other things. I'm totally not talking about myself. But sometimes you're just not feeling it, and forcing sex usually makes things worse, not better. And the key is learning to listen to yourself and give yourself permission to pause. I always hope people have some level of sexual communication with their partner or partners, in which case it could look like saying something really simple like, hey, I'm just not feeling it today, or asking to take a break, a pause, or even pivoting to another form of intimacy, cuddling, making out. There's no universal rule about how long you should try before calling it. Some days it's 5 minutes, other days it's 15, and sometimes you just know instantly. What matters is honoring your body's message. Being honest with your partner isn't giving up. It's practicing consent and self-care and respect for yourself. And you'd be surprised how often that honesty can actually strengthen intimacy. Any respectful partner will respond well to open communication. And sometimes that kind of conversation creates a deeper connection than forcing sex ever could or would. And let's talk about that pressure for a second, because it is a huge factor here. When you feel like you have to perform, that pressure feeds that anxiety, which in turn makes it harder to be present or even aroused. So of course, pleasure isn't going to be at the forefront. You know my feelings on this. Pressure and pleasure do not a happy marriage make. So letting go of that pressure can feel surprisingly liberating. You can talk about it afterward. You can enjoy the connection in other ways and then come back to sex later when your body and your mind are actually ready. Sometimes the act of pausing and honoring your own needs can make the next sexual encounter better, because it's coming from a place of sexual curiosity and sexual desire rather than relational obligation, which truly shouldn't be a thing anyway. And another thing to remember is that everyone, even people who seem consistently and constantly sexually confident or experienced, has days where sex just doesn't happen the way they want. I have those days. I promise you it happens. It's normal. And if you practice self-compassion and communicate openly, you can turn those moments into something positive. Connection, playfulness. Your worth and your desirability and your ability to have satisfying sex aren't defined by one day or one encounter. Over time, learning to notice and respect your body's cues, it's only going to make intimacy more enjoyable, less stressful, and ultimately more authentic. You're showing up genuinely. And it's about creating an environment where sex is something you want to show up for, rather than something you feel forced to perform for. Mismatched sex drives, either amount of sex or time of day not aligning. Mismatched sex drives are probably one of the most common things that couples run into, and yet somehow it still manages to make people feel like there is something wrong with them. And let me tell you right now, there isn't. It is completely normal for partners to want sex at different times, with different frequencies, or even just in different ways. Sometimes it's obvious, like one person is ready to go at 7 a.m. while the other one is still kind of basically half asleep dreaming about coffee and toast. Other times it's more subtle. Maybe one partner might have bursts of sexual energy when they are stressed and need a release, while another partner's libido dips when they are tired or anxious or emotionally drained. And yeah, that mismatch can feel really frustrating because you might feel like you are constantly missing each other's cues, and sometimes it can even lead to resentment. It can lead to self-doubt, but none of that means that you or your relationship is broken. It's just biology, mood, and life getting in the way. And the most important thing here is, of course, communication. I know that sounds like a buzzword you've heard a million times, especially on this podcast, but it is basically completely imperative, and done the right way, it works. And by the right, in quotations, way, I mean honest, gentle, maybe even a little playful, and always approaching the topic as a team. This isn't one person against the other. This isn't a competition. There isn't a prize or a certificate for best sex drive, best sex frequency, best time of day to have sex. This is something to work on as teammates, and looking at how to approach the mismatch in a way that feels safe and pleasurable for all parties involved. And it would be helpful to have a full conversation about this, because that's the only way you are going to understand where the other person is coming from. Ask them what their ideal frequency looks like and their most sexually charged times of day. The more you know about your partner, the more you have to work with. Or if you need to try and keep it light, you want to try and keep it light, even something as simple as, hey, I'm not in the mood right now, but how about we plan something for tomorrow or Friday or whatever day of the week? That can go a long way. And listen, I know some people bristle at the idea of scheduling sex because it sounds clinical, unromantic, or like you are turning intimacy into a business meeting. And I get it. That thought can make anyone a little bit queasy. But scheduling sex doesn't have to be rigid or joyless. You don't need like agendas and spreadsheets. Think of it less like penciling in a meeting on your calendar and more like giving yourselves permission to show up fully when you can. It's about creating the conditions where intimacy can actually happen without distraction or guilt. It's really easy for desire to vanish when one person is exhausted, stressed, all of the above, and then the other person feels frustrated that they are being ignored. So scheduling or even just setting gentle intentions can prevent that cycle. Saying, hey, tomorrow evening, let's have some time for just us. No phones, no distractions. Isn't about obligation. It's making sure the moment exists so that when it arrives, both of you can be present. That way, the focus is on connection and curiosity and pleasure rather than trying to force something that's not naturally there in the moment. And scheduling doesn't kill spontaneity. It can actually create it. When you know a space is intentionally set aside, you can relax and be playful instead of anxious. It's like giving yourself a permission slip to be present. And sometimes knowing that the time is there actually makes desire show up naturally. Yes, scheduling sex can feel weird at first, but if you reframe it as a tool to enhance connection rather than a rigid obligation, it becomes something freeing instead of stressful. You're not trying to manufacture desire. You're just making sure there's a safe, pressure-free space where intimacy can happen when both people feel ready. Over time, that kind of intentionality often makes sex feel more spontaneous and connected and enjoyable because you are showing up from a place of choice and desire, not guilt or obligation. And another big point is intimacy doesn't have to be penetrative sex every time. It doesn't have to be full foreplay every time. Cuddling, holding hands, giving each other massages, or simply being close without any expectation of orgasm counts. Those moments of connection can help bridge the gap when your sexual rhythms don't line up, and sometimes they even increase sexual desire over time. And let's not forget solo sex. Masturbation, we know I love it. It's not cheating. It's not a relationship failure. It can actually be incredibly helpful. It relieves tension. It helps you understand your own body more. And that can make the sex you do have together feel more enjoyable because neither of you is carrying built up frustration or pressure. All of this being said, it's also okay to acknowledge that sometimes, no matter how much you communicate or try to compromise, sexual mismatches can be difficult or even impossible to fully reconcile. Some people's libidos just don't match, at least not consistently, and that can be really hard and sometimes quite heartbreaking. And it's okay to feel sad, frustrated, or even worried that it means the relationship might be over. Those feelings are valid. And in those situations, the focus needs to shift from trying to force perfect sexual alignment to finding intimacy and satisfaction in other ways. Emotional closeness, shared experiences, humor, physical touch that feels good, and sometimes even accepting that maybe sexual activity will be rare. That acceptance doesn't mean giving up on the relationship. It just means being honest about reality and working creatively within it. But the honest truth is, for some couples, a persistent mismatch in sexual desire can be a deal breaker. That doesn't mean anyone was a failure. It doesn't mean love or care wasn't real. It just means that sexual compatibility is a real factor in long-term satisfaction for many people. If it comes to that point, it's okay to make the difficult choice to step away from a relationship that isn't meeting your sexual needs. That choice can be really painful, but it's also an act of self-respect and honesty, both with yourself and with your partner. And even if a breakup happens, it doesn't invalidate the connection you shared or the ways you supported each other. Sometimes acknowledging that sexual needs are not aligned and making a respectful, thoughtful decision to part ways is the healthiest option for both people. But ultimately, a mismatched libido situation is a complete spectrum. For some couples, for some partnerships, creative solutions, communication, and compromise can make it work beautifully. For others, the differences may be too significant, and it's okay to recognize that too. Mismatched libidos don't mean a relationship is broken, and it doesn't mean anyone is doing anything wrong. It just means that you are humans with slightly different rhythms, and part of intimacy is learning to navigate those differences. Over time, it can actually strengthen a relationship because it teaches empathy and patience and creativity and better communication skills. And humor helps too. Sometimes it's okay to laugh at the ridiculousness of our body's timing just not lining up, or the fact that one person wants it straight after work and the other wants it at midnight after their third glass of wine. And for some relationships, it might work for them to accept that sexual moments will be rare, but it doesn't mean that connection, affection, and love can't thrive. Over time, with understanding, some playfulness, and some realistic expectations, mismatched drives become less of a source of stress and more of a part of your unique rhythm as a couple. Porn addiction has destroyed my life and it's never been healthy. I have a low sex drive as a result. I'm hyper aware of all of this too, and I use Viagra, but I still struggle to maintain an erection with a condom on. I see there being little hope and have resigned myself to being alone with porn forever. Now, I do have a whole episode on porn called The XXX Files, which might be really helpful to listen to, but porn can really change the way your brain expects sexual arousal. And honestly, for a lot of people, it's a bigger factor than we like to admit, or that we are admitting. The thing is, our brains are designed to respond to novel, high-intensity stimulation. And when porn provides that in a super consistent, artificial way, your nervous system kind of rewires itself to expect that kind of stimulation all the time. So when real life sex comes along with real touch, real smell, real movement, it can feel underwhelming and then impossible to get fully aroused. And that's not a moral failing, and it doesn't mean you're broken. It's biology and psychology doing what they do. We aren't taught these things. People look to porn to teach them sex, and ironically, it can be the very thing that completely gets in the way of their own sexual pleasure. Even if you are taking Viagra or another medication, that doesn't solve the mental side of things. You can have all the physiological support in the world, but if your brain is still wired to respond to screens, the anxiety, performance pressure, or lack of natural arousal can make sex really tricky. And I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are definitely not alone. Millions of people experience this, and it's not shameful, but we do need better education and realistic, accessible, helpful resources about the effects of porn. Because it doesn't have to be the villain, but it also shouldn't be the main character of your sex life. Ideally, it should be more like a cameo, something that pops in every now and then, maybe adds a bit of spice, but it doesn't carry the whole storyline. It's like Janice in Friends. If porn becomes the star of the show, the rest of your sex life, your relationships, your connections, your real experiences, they start to feel like side characters. And that's when the problems start creeping in, because the starring role should always belong to you, your body, your partners, your intimacy, your actual desires. That's where the real plot is. And that's what creates the kind of satisfaction that you can't stream on a screen. And the good news is, I promise you, it's not hopeless. Recovery is absolutely possible, and a lot of it is about retraining your brain to respond to real life sensations again. That might look like gradually reducing or even pausing porn altogether. And that's a choice you're going to either have to be self-disciplined enough to make, or please do work with a sex therapist if that's accessible to you, who can support you in that choice and that journey. And you need to spend some time exploring your own body without artificial cues, which can help to rebuild confidence and comfort in actual sexual situations. Sometimes it's as simple as giving yourself permission to touch, kiss, or explore without any expectation of orgasm or performance. And it's slow work. Your nervous system doesn't change overnight, so patience is essential. Think of it as retraining a muscle. The more gentle, consistent practice you have, the stronger it becomes over time. And one of the hardest parts of this is pressure. The moment you think, I have to get it up now or it'll never work, your anxiety skyrockets, and that makes arousal harder. It's a vicious cycle. So part of the recovery process is learning to separate sex from performance. Just focus on connection and curiosity and pleasure rather than results. Sometimes that means a long makeout session, exploring erogenous zones, masturbating without any expectation, just letting your body remember what natural arousal feels like. And yes, I'm sure that is going to feel awkward. It's going to feel frustrating at times. And it's probably going to feel a little bit silly at first, but that's okay because every small experience is part of the rewiring process. But you do not have to resign yourself to a life alone with porn. Your libido absolutely can return. Real life intimacy can be exciting and pleasurable and fulfilling again. It's about taking small steps, forgiving yourself when things don't go perfectly, and celebrating each tiny success, whether that is feeling aroused by a sexual partner, maintaining an erection for a moment, or simply enjoying touch without expectation. Those small wins add up, and over time, your sexual confidence, connection, and pleasure can come back in a way that feels real and sustainable. You know, your sexual self is resilient. Your nervous system might need some time to adjust, but with some patience, the pleasure you've been missing is absolutely reclaimable. And honestly, some people find that going through something like this process actually makes sex better than it was before, because it's more mindful and more connected and more about real intimacy than just a goal or an outcome. So it will take some self-discipline for sure, but take it step by step, and you can absolutely find your way back to enjoying sex in a way that feels natural and exciting and truly yours. And as we all know, I support sex workers and the sex industry. I like porn myself, but if you are watching porn, please, please, please do make sure it's from an ethical site that treats their sex workers correctly. We do not support unethical and non-consensual porn up in these parts. My general safety. Yeah, this one's pretty deep and dark, but fair. Feeling safe is the foundation of good sex. And without it, pleasure can't really happen. And for women and vulva owners especially, safety isn't just a vibe, it's a very real concern. You know, when I say safe, I don't mean cozy lighting or a locked door. I mean knowing that you're not going to be harmed or pressured or disrespected. And that isn't paranoia, it's reality. We've all heard the stories. Some of us have lived them. Partners who push boundaries, people who lie about using protection, situations where saying no gets ignored or worse. Even the fear of being judged afterward, being called names, having your reputation attacked or being shamed, that can be enough to keep someone from fully letting go during sex. That kind of background fear is heavy, and yeah, it absolutely fuels sexual anxiety. And that anxiety isn't irrational. Your nervous system is wired to protect you. So if you don't feel secure with the person you're with, your body is going to stay tense. And that tension can physically show up as dryness, difficulty getting aroused, pain during sex, or just not being able to enjoy yourself. It's your body saying, I don't feel safe right now. And that's not a flaw. That's wisdom. I think I've spoken before about the the fact that when I've been in relationships with people who have been abusive in the past, every time I was going to see them and my body thought sex was going to occur, I would literally start bleeding. It's now insane to me that I didn't pay closer attention to that at the time, but my body was literally yelling, leave. And as soon as I did leave those relationships, the bleeding stopped. Like, our bodies know. And creating safety starts before you get anywhere near a bed with someone. It's about, as best we can, choosing partners who respect our boundaries in small ways. You know, you're never going to be a mind reader, but you can see how someone reacts if you say, I don't want another drink, or I'm not ready for that. Do they respect you immediately, or do they push? That's your answer about whether they'll respect you in a sexual context too. Trust isn't built in the bedroom. It's built in all the little interactions leading up to it. And that's not just in relationships. This should be the case for casual sexual interactions too. We all deserve safety and respect, no matter what the encounter. And there's the practical side. Let a friend know where you'll be if you are seeing someone new. Keep your phone accessible. Meet in safe public spaces first. And when it comes to sex itself, talk openly about boundaries, about protection, about what feels good and what doesn't. Those conversations might feel awkward if you aren't used to having them, but they are a lot less awkward than feeling unsafe in the middle of an encounter. And let's also talk about long-term relationships too, because safety doesn't become irrelevant once you are committed. Emotional safety matters just as much as physical. Can you tell your partner that position hurts, or I'm not in the mood tonight, without fear of anger, sulking, or guilt tripping? Do they listen when you share something vulnerable, or do they dismiss it? If the answer is the latter, that isn't just bad communication. That relationship is completely lacking the foundation of trust and safety that intimacy requires. And I'd support you completely calling that relationship into question, to be honest. I'd be telling you to pack your bags and come to Peach's Palace. And sometimes we have to say the hard part out loud. If you consistently don't feel safe with someone, sex with them may never feel good. No amount of breathing exercises or just relax advice is going to override your nervous system if your brain knows you are not secure. It's not about you being broken, it's about the situation being unsafe. The point is, safety isn't optional. It's not a bonus feature of sex, it's the baseline. Without it, sexual anxiety isn't going anywhere because your body is doing exactly what it's designed to do: protect you. And when you do have safety, when you know that your partner has your back, respects your no, honors your body, that's when you can let go and feel pleasure and actually enjoy sex the way it's meant to be enjoyed. So if you ever feel that twinge of doubt, that tightening in your chest, or just that little voice saying something isn't right, listen to it. That's your body's wisdom. You are allowed to stop. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to want better, because good sex doesn't happen in spite of safety. It only happens because of it. Trying to have sex when my puppy is outside scratching on the door. I feel this one on a deep level. Trying to have sex while your dog is scratching at the door is peak chaos energy. Like, here you are trying to have this intimate, sexy moment, and meanwhile, your dog is outside like, what's going on in there? Why am I not invited? Is this playtime? Is this murder? Do I need to save you? Dogs have no chill when it comes to sex. They can smell it. they can hear it, and they are convinced something major is happening that they need to be a part of. And it's the least sexy soundtrack in the world. You've got music playing, you're in the zone, and then scratch, 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 whine, whine, whine. Nothing kills the mood faster than eye contact with a set of puppy paws under the door. But it's so universal that obviously it's just hilarious. Like, welcome to adult sex. It's not candles and rose petals. It's making out while your dog cries outside because they think you're abandoning them forever. The best and only thing you can do is laugh about it. Sometimes you pause, settle the dog down, and then get back to it. And other times you just accept that part of the intimacy is working around the chaos. Because if it's not the dog, it'll be something else. Kids, roommates, neighbours blasting the fucking lawnmower at the exact wrong moment. Life just doesn't care about your sexy timing. So, yeah, it's awkward in the moment, but in the long run, it becomes one of those silly, funny things that you and your partner just laugh about. It's not ruining the mood. It's just sex with bonus commentary. I mean, listen, I literally just have sex with both my dogs on the bed. Anyone else with me on that one? Trust me, we start running out of space, given that Jack Reacher is 6'4" and basically a tank. Ronnie and Reggie have learned to turn away and ignore literally everything that's occurring. But I'm not going to lie, bless, they always look a bit traumatized after. My body being judged because it's not perfect. Well, feeling judged about your body is something so many people struggle with, and sex has this way of amplifying it because it's such a vulnerable act. You are exposing yourself literally and emotionally, and that can make every little thing feel way bigger than it actually is. Maybe it's a roll of fat that catches your eye. Maybe it's a stretch mark. Maybe it's a scar, or even just a part of your body that feels different today than it did yesterday. But all of that is normal, and everyone, even people who seem totally confident, have moments where they look in the mirror and think, ugh, not today. But nobody's body is perfect. Not your partner's, not your friends, not even the people on social media who seem flawless. Perfection is a myth. It literally does not exist. It is made up. And chasing it just sets you up to feel anxious and distracted from what actually matters, which is presence and connection and pleasure. And what always changes the game is shifting your focus from how you look to how you feel in your body. Pay attention to sensation, the touch, the physical anticipation, the way your body responds to movement. Those are the things that make intimacy electric, not the way a body measures up to some impossible made-up standard. People who are worth being with notice that. They notice your energy and your curiosity and the way you're engaging with them, not the little things that you think are flaws. And yes, it takes practice. Your brain will still wander to those insecurities sometimes. And that's okay. That's normal. The key is to gently redirect yourself back to the moment without judgment. Like, give yourself a little mental pat on the back instead of a scolding. Be kind to yourself. And I did a couple of episodes that were quite heavy on the body confidence last season. So please do check those out for a deep dive on this. But staying present is truly the most important thing. And listen, a bit of humour helps too. We can laugh at the weird little noises our bodies make, the awkward angles we might hit, sometimes the little unexpected things that happen mid-sex. I just think playfulness takes so much pressure off, and it reminds you that intimacy doesn't have to be choreographed. It's messy and it's silly, and guess what? It's still amazing. and celebrate what your body can do, how it moves, how it gives pleasure, how it receives pleasure, how it connects you to another person. That can shift the perspective from critique to gratitude. Instead of saying, my body is flawed, you can say, my body is powerful and responsive and capable of giving me pleasure. And isn't that fucking amazing? Even more importantly, remember that insecurities are normal. So having them doesn't mean you are unworthy of pleasure or connection. Every single body is worthy, and every body can experience joy and desire and intimacy. And when you start to really embody that, you'll notice a shift. The little imperfections, whatever the fuck they are, they stop feeling like obstacles and start to feel like part of your unique, intimate story. A part of the experience that makes intimacy with your body, with your partner or partners, real and exciting. So on those moments when your inner critic shows up, breathe, refocus on the sensation, come back to the present moment, and remember your body is yours. It's incredible, and it deserves to be celebrated, enjoyed, and pleasured and honored exactly as it is. When we look at all of these anxieties, UTIs, queefing, mismatched drives, lower libido, body insecurities, they actually have a lot in common. They are normal. They are human. And the good news is they are usually totally manageable. Some easier than others, sure, but feeling anxious about any of these things doesn't make you broken, and it certainly doesn't define your sex life. With some communication and patience and self-compassion, and sometimes, yes, even a bit of professional guidance, most of these worries can improve. And I want to stress this as someone who has been going through it myself. Sexual anxiety doesn't have to run the show. It's not this big scary monster that ruins everything. It's a part of your experience, a very real one. And you can learn to work with it instead of constantly fighting against it. And honestly, even small steps, checking in with yourself, talking openly with a partner, giving yourself a break can make a bigger difference than you might think. Over time, all of those things add up, and suddenly what once felt impossible starts to feel normal and then even enjoyable. And from there, pleasure, connection, excitement, they all stop being this far off goal and start feeling like something you actually get to have. That shift doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen, and it's so worth it. And yes, anxiety might still show up from time to time, but it doesn't get to drive anymore. You do. Friends, lovers, listeners, thank you so much for allowing me this space to talk about my own anxieties today. And in the same way that you may be looking at ways to overcome your performance anxieties, I am also currently trying to overcome mine. In the same way you are looking at ways to keep showing up for yourselves sexually, I'm also going to try and keep showing up for all of you. I am sorry for my absence. We all have our battles, and it would be silly of me to keep advising patience and self-compassion whilst not extending that to myself. But I do want to keep creating this safe space for all things sex and relationships, and I am going to endeavour to keep doing so. So who knows? Maybe you'll get that Bonnie Blue episode next week after all. Sending love to all. And for now, thanks for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love, Peach.